bringing people together, stakeholders, the community members, institutional partners like the universities at Shady Grove, and have a dialogue about the future where we really define this community vision that Carrie mentioned in her introduction. And through that process, it can involve a lot of cooperation. Also, back and forth, we all have different values and different places that we're coming from. So understanding what are the issues, the strengths, the opportunities, and also really the challenges in an area. It's also about analyzing and preparing land use and zoning recommendations. So figuring out what's here right now, and also what that means of like what's built here, what we might need, and preparing recommendations in land use, which means, what you're allowed to build here, and what it can look like, but also for transportation infrastructure, environmental assets, community facilities like parks or recreation facilities, among other things. Our plans now also look to support and prioritize equity, making a more fair and equitable county and community. And it also, primarily all of this will serve as a guide for future development. As I said, what can be built here, what should be built here, what needs to be built or created here or supported. And we also, in addition to these community dialogues, incorporate county policy guidance from such things like the Climate Action Plan or Vision Zero resolutions, which deal with traffic safety. But there are also limits to what our master plan does, and we always like to be upfront about what they can do, but what they also can't do. We can't ensure through the master plan process that redevelopment or reinvestment will occur in a specific area, and we can't bring specific retailers or commercial uses to the area. A lot of that is up to market forces. And we can't revoke existing approvals for development. So if something has an existing approval, as there are a few projects in this area that have had approvals for years, we can't remove those approvals. We can't require people to consolidate land. So, sometimes if we think things would work better if they could just become one big parcel, we can't do that. We can't force it. Sometimes we can facilitate these things. We can't fund capital improvement projects like building a new sidewalk, but we can recommend them so that they may go into a capital improvement, the capital improvement projects for the future. We also can't address roadway operational issues. So just like, stoplights and stop signs. And we can enforce code enforcement. So if you don't like something that your neighbor has done on their property, maybe it's out of code, that wouldn't be done through the master plan. It would be done through contacting Department of Permitting Services. And often through these master plans, we get questions and complaints and ideas that we can't handle through the master plan, but that we can point you to the right person in the county government that can help with these issues. So if you're not sure if the master plan can handle it, feel free to pass along the questions or comments anyway, and we'll try to get you to the right person. So as we develop recommendations, I said in the areas of like land use and transportation, as well as things like community facilities or urban design, how a place looks and feels, there's a lot that goes into that. And one big part that I mentioned is community input that really is the wants and needs, values and vision, as well as the lived experience of community members like yourselves. There's also the expertise that we bring as planners that include research and analysis of market forces, best practices of what's worked in other parts of the county or other parts of the country, and guiding policies as the ones I mentioned, like the Climate Action Plan. There's also outside expert consultation. We often work with people who are experts either on environmental issues or transportation issues that can help us analyze or collect data in a specific area, or help us do market analysis or research. So all of that goes in, and it's not to say that each one goes in equally. It's kind of a mix, and they all play a part and create a balance when we're developing these recommendations. So this is our plan area, and it can be, I always call it my Swiss cheese plan, because it's full of non-contiguous pieces. So the pieces in white are the plan area, and in yellow is the city of Gaithersburg, and in pink is the city of Rockville, and in brown, or orange, sorry, is the town of Washington Grove. And those areas have their own planning authority, so they do their own planning. So although we work with them throughout the process as Montgomery Planning, we do not develop recommendations specifically for any of the land that falls under their jurisdiction. But we do for all of the areas in white. So you can see kind of white outlined in gray. We have the Western Quince Orchard neighborhood, all the way on the left side of the screen, as well as in the center, that's the National Institutes of Standard and Technology. And above that is the Londonderry Apartments, as well as some other apartment complexes. And then on the east side is really what we consider our focus area. So it's circled here. And the focus area is really where we've experienced the most change recently, and where we expect to see more change in the future. So these other areas, where we anticipate that there'll be fewer changes and fewer developments at least in the near future. So this is where we've seen most of our new approved or built development over the past decade. It's also adjacent to some important commercial centers that have developed over the past decade, like the Rio waterfront in Gaithersburg, and downtown Crown, also in Gaithersburg. It also contains several major roadways that have planned infrastructure coming in, such as the Great Seneca Transit Network, which is a current Montgomery County Department of Transportation project looking to increase high quality bus service in the area. And this is also the area that departs the most from that 2010 plan vision that Carrie Sanders mentioned in her introduction, that differs from that live, work, walkable kind of urban core. And you might hear us throughout this meeting. So I just wanted to, I feel like I'm doing this is a plan and then slowly going in. You might also hear us talk about the Life Science Center, and that's this area, the area that includes the universities at Shady Grove, as well as the Adventist Healthcare Medical Center at Shady Grove, a lot of our large life science development, as well as apartment buildings such as the Camden Shady Grove, Mallory Square, and the former Public Safety Training Academy site. Oh, oops. Sorry. So I've gotten ahead of myself. So, this plan area, I think when we're looking at it, it's fascinating because it is an incredibly diverse area. If recently the city of Gaithersburg was listed as one of the most diverse cities in the entire country. And we see that reflected in this area. We also see that there's a lot of growth in this area, both in the terms of residential growth and life science development, as well as medical center and services and educational services. And there are a lot of opportunities. We know that a lot of people also love this area for the things that it already has, and a lot of people call it home now. So we're currently working on our existing conditions analysis, and what that is really an analysis of what exists now, and it will serve as the basis for a lot of our analysis and recommendations in the future. It'll be the information that we're collecting that in concert with the feedback that we get from community members will go into developing our recommendations. And and we thought that a fun way to share some tidbits from this would just be to do a little trivia that you all are welcome to take some guesses at the answers, get to know the plan area just a little bit better. And then And then we'll share out the answers and some additional context and information about it once people have had a chance to fill it out. But just so you know, the existing conditions report we'll be sharing, we're currently compiling and we'll be sharing with the planning board and with the public in October.
So I just launched the poll. Hopefully everybody's seeing it and has a chance to respond. There are 9 questions and they're all multiple choice, so hopefully it should go pretty quickly. So maybe we'll give just a couple minutes for folks to respond and then we can go through some of the answers. All right, it looks like about half of people have responded. Maybe give just another 10, 15 seconds if you get your final answers in, and then we'll go through the responses. All right, so I think you might be seeing the answers up on your screen, but just in case, I'll go through them. So for the first question, approximately how many people live in the plan area? The answer is 37,000 people. The population has grown by 50% since the year 2000. So 37,000 people now call this area home. Question 2, 20% of housing units in the plan area are income restricted. And nevertheless, 45% of households in the area are cost burdened by housing units. So that means that they spend more than 30% of their income on housing. For the third question, 26% of the land area in the Life Science Center is covered by surface parking lots. So that's quite a large amount of land. Question 4, 2,500 feet is the length of the longest street block in the area. Just for some context, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is also a large life science hub, street blocks are rarely more than 500 feet long, while the longest street block here is 2,500 feet, so almost 5 times as long. For question 5, 60% of road crossings in the area are considered uncomfortable for people walking. Over half of all pedestrian crossings in the area are completely unmarked, and then another 10% require crossing multiple lanes of high-speed traffic, so that makes those uncomfortable. Question 6, the Great Seneca area has an extremely low vacancy rate, just 2.5%, and that's even lower than the entire county's currently historically low 4.2% vacancy. And a healthy vacancy rate is considered somewhere between 6 and 7.5%. And low vacancy rates can result in higher rents in the area. Question 7, 55% of the population are renters in the plan area. That compares with only about 1/3 of residents countywide. And then question 8, 50% of residents in the plan area speak a language other than English at home. And the top 4 languages there are Spanish with almost 18%, Chinese, including both Mandarin and Cantonese with nearly 7%, about 3% speak Korean, and about 3% speak French. And for the final question, the Life Science Center boasts 7,000 private sector life science jobs, which is more than double the 3,300 life science jobs in the rest of all of Montgomery County.
Thanks, Alex. So you guys can give us some feedback about how the trivia worked out. We thought that this might be a fun way to get to know this area a little bit and share a little bit about the information that we've been collecting over the past several months. As I said, there'll be a more comprehensive report sharing this type of information that will be in October. And let's see, sorry, sharing again. So, listening to some of the information that we shared, as well as a little bit knowing about the plan area yourselves and hearing Carrie's description of how there are some departures from the plan area, just like, why are we doing this plan and why are we doing it now? And I think the one of the top reasons is that there are major departures from the 2010 plan that really set forth a tight vision for, especially in the Life Sciences Center, the last map that I showed, for a life science hub that was really mixed use and included amenities for people who lived there and worked there, and a good mix of retail as well as jobs and housing. And although we've seen some of that development, we also and some of those play out, we've also seen major departures, and we've seen less people living in the area than we originally anticipated. We've also seen that some of the investments that were anticipated, like the corridor cities transitways, have not come to fruition in this time period since the 2010 plan. There's also new infrastructure that is planned for this area. I mentioned earlier the Great Seneca Transit Network, which is a series of 4 high quality, high speed bus lines that is currently under development by the Montgomery County Department of Transportation, and the corridor connectors, which are other bus routes that were recommended in the Corridor Forward Plan, which was recently passed by Council, and will provide service both within the plan area, but also to other destinations nearby. So looking at how this can affect the area. And there have been a number of emerging issues and trends in the area. In 2010, when the plan area, or when the last plan was passed, we didn't really have rideshare in the area. We didn't really use Capital Bike and Capital Bike Share in Montgomery County. I mean, smartphones, I didn't have a smartphone in 2010, at least. Maybe some of you did, but there are just things that have changed how we live and work. Things like the pandemic that have changed how a lot of people live and how they work and interact with the world. So there are things like this that will also be going into our analysis of the area and our development of recommendations. We want to prioritize and look at some of the connections to new and growing destinations, like the ones that I mentioned in Crown and Rio Lakefront. And other destinations that people have been pointing out to us that are sometimes very nearby, but inaccessible by transit, walking, biking, and even can be difficult by car, by driving too. And then finally, we're doing this now because a lot of new policy guidance has come out over the past decade. Things like the Climate Action Plan, which have an urgency that need to be recognized and incorporated into the work that we do, as well as things like Vision Zero that look at how we can make roads safer for all road users, people walking, biking, taking transit, and driving. And things like the Racial Equity and Social Justice Act that looks at how we incorporate those important issues into the planning work that we did. So this is why we're doing this work now, and it will continue to collect information over the next several months, and also continue to do this visioning work, which I'll pass the baton to my colleague Jessica McVeary to talk about next.
Thanks, Maren. Well, as Maren mentioned, my name's Jessica McVeary, and I'm a planning supervisor with Montgomery Planning's Mid-County Master Plan team. And I'm happy to be here with you tonight and just echo the thanks and the gratitude for being here with us tonight. So we're going to transition now into what we hope will be a robust conversation with all of you, in which we can learn about your hopes, your concerns, your ideas for the future of your communities. But before diving into the discussion, I just want to take a moment and share a little bit about what we mean by visioning. As Maren mentioned in the earlier slides about the planning process, one of the things that master plans such as this effort seek to do is bring community members and stakeholders together to foster dialogue about the future and ultimately define a shared vision for the future. And this process of visioning that we're beginning with you all here this evening is collaborative, and it's built on the feedback and the input that each of you provide. And it will continue to grow as we speak with community members and stakeholders through this planning process. Next slide, please. Thanks. So over the last few months, we have spoken with many of, perhaps many of you, several people at different locations in the community. And we've also launched an online questionnaire to begin to understand what people like most about living in the Great Seneca area, what people want to make sure is preserved, what needs to be improved, and what people would like to see happen in the future. And through these conversations and responses, we've received a lot of valuable input that we really hope to build on this evening, as well as through additional conversations in the coming weeks. So we do want to acknowledge that questions like, how do you imagine the future, or what do you want to see in your community in 20 years, can be somewhat overwhelming. And so we do have a series of questions that you see on the screen here that we hope we can use to spark thought and dialogue. And these questions are really framed around the themes of create, protect, and avoid. And so, for example, in create, what is missing in the area that you want to add or improve? In protect, what about the area do you love and want to maintain? And what are things you either want to remove or prevent in the area? And don't worry, you don't have to remember these. As we move into the to the discussion, we will try to prompt the dialogue using these questions, but really wanted to sort of plant a seed of some of the discussions that we hope to have this evening. So what we're going to do now is we're going to invite you all to raise your hand if you have anything that came to mind, right off the top, and we'll call on you. And when we call on you, we'll ask you to unmute. And if you're amenable or interested and you'd like to turn your camera on, we welcome you to do that. You can also provide your thoughts in the chat, and here are some instructions to kind of help with where you find the mute, unmute button, how you turn your camera on, and how you access the chat. And we're going to be recording the ideas, the suggestions, the feedback that you provide in something called a Google Jamboard. And basically, it's sort of an online series of Post-it notes where we're going to record what you share with us, and that can be our record of this evening, but it can also be a way for you to let us know if we didn't capture something quite right. We want to make sure that we're, capturing things in the way that you intend for them to be captured. So if you feel like what we put up there on the board isn't quite right, please do let us know. So perhaps we can dive right in and get started. And does anyone have anything that they immediately want to start the dialogue? I see one hand so far. Susan, we'd love for you to unmute and share your thoughts.
Oh, thank you, Jessica. Was wanting to know a couple of things. How does the bicycle transit plan fit into the overall plan?
Thank you so much for that question. So in the plans that we create and that we, take through the planning process and have approved and adopted by the county council and ultimately by the Maryland National Capital and Park and Planning Commission, they're sort of layers. They build on each other. And so one of the plans that is sort of a foundational to the work that we're doing is the bicycle master plan, which was approved and adopted in 2018. So we will take the recommendations that were developed in the 2018 bicycle master plan as sort of a foundation in this planning process. And because that was a county-wide plan, some of the recommendations perhaps didn't get to the level of detail or granularity that might be appropriate for us to evaluate in a more neighborhood-specific plan. So as we're looking at the existing conditions analysis that Maren mentioned, and as we go through this visioning process, if we hear from community members or we identify as staff that there are areas where additional bicycle recommendations are needed, or where the countywide plan missed a segment, that's something that we would then address through the planning process that we're going through now, through this planning process. And so ultimately, each master plan amends the plans that are before it. And so if we did find that there was a place where we needed to change the recommendations of the bicycle master plan, this plan would then amend the recommendations of the bicycle master plan. Hopefully that helps. So I'll also mention that that one of our colleagues, Bilal, is adding questions to the chat so that you can refer back to those to get us started this evening. But for example, anyone have any thoughts on maybe we start with something a little bit more easier, like is there anything you'd like to have close by that you don't have currently? Oh, Susan, did you want to ask another question or provide another comment?
Yes, I did want to ask another question. That is, how do you prioritize? That is that what we're doing as community input? Are we telling you what is more important to us? So for instance, do you prioritize environment over housing for the poor? What is there any kind of plan for prioritizing?
Great question. And I think, sorry, this is Maren jumping back on. I think, this is one of the earlier slides that I talked about. It's kind of a balance, and part of, I think the prioritization comes from several different areas and is partly what we hear from community members about what the actual needs are in the area that they see as their lived experience, and saying what they really need and what they want to create and protect in the area. But that's not the only part of it. Part of it is also the data collection and analysis that we do. So for example, people might say, that we don't need to, that they don't identify people getting injured while walking as a priority. But what we see as part of our data is that there are a lot of injuries in this area due to people just walking around and living their lives in the area. So we might identify that as a priority through data, as well as what we hear from people in our meetings and at these pop-ups and through our surveys that we have. And then another part of the priority is what the county council and the county executive set as priorities for the county. So right now, the county has set certain priorities around housing or with the environment. Our department, the Montgomery Planning, is tasked with implementing some of the climate action plan. So the priorities that have been identified through this long process of creating the climate action plan will influence the work that we do as well. So it's like we have some flexibility in terms of how we prioritize things, and other things are set by the county council. And I know that that isn't an entirely satisfying answer, but it is a little bit of a balance. And what we try to do is when we get this community feedback and input is that we record this both written down in the meeting, but then also that we record it in our files, and then we analyze the information that we're hearing, and we share it not only with our staff who are working on the recommendations, but that we also share it as part of our report out to the Montgomery Planning Board, who will ultimately pass this on to the Montgomery County Council, and we'll also pass that feedback along to them. So the input that we get from folks does help prioritize what the recommendations are, and it's a piece of the puzzle. So I don't know if that totally answered your question, but I guess the short answer is yes, that is part of what we're doing tonight. And also that's not the complete answer.
Thanks, Maren. So I do see that we have one green sticky note in the protect category to maintain as much green space on Bellwood Farm and in other projects. Do others have other things in your community that you really love or value and want to see protected in the future? Some of the things that we've heard through some of the conversations that we've had in the community and through the online questionnaire, one thing we've heard repeatedly is the appreciation for parks, trails, open spaces. And so I'm curious if others really, value those things in your community. All right, well, we do have some questions in the chat, and so perhaps we can ask Carrie Sanders to provide some thoughts on the question regarding focusing on bicycling, pedestrian access in more established neighborhoods.
Okay. Thank you, Jessica. And I also see that Susan put a comment in the chat regarding protecting historic resources. So it looks like we're adding that to the, thank you, Susan. So we did get a question in the chat. I'm just going to read it quickly. I'm so happy that Montgomery County is leading the community regarding planning of bicycle, pedestrian, and public transportation access between housing and employment. I live in Bethesda, where we have similar, but we have different but also similar issues. I'm wondering if your department also focuses on more established neighborhoods. So Deborah, thank you for the question. We definitely have heard from the community loud and clear all throughout Montgomery County that transportation, and you could see it in the survey results today that Maren was sharing, transportation is a, constant issue on folks' minds about, how to get safely from place to place and conveniently from place to place, and how we are planning for that, not only for like areas that you mentioned that developed many years ago, and areas that are growing, such as the Great Seneca Plan area, and also other places in Montgomery County, even where we have some development by metro stations, but we're still looking to see more development happen to help the growth of our transit system. So I think that, this is a well-timed question. We have geographic areas throughout the county where we have planners working with the community on individual plans. And that spans all the way from our, down county areas, bordering DC and Virginia, and Prince George's County, all the way up to our up county areas. So we are definitely looking at this from a countywide perspective. And I'm glad you shared this question as well. I do think that one of the things that we've been asked through some of the engagement we've done in this plan thus far is to create more walkable places in the plan area. So I'd be interested if others in the group feel the same way, or, some of the questions that we put in the chat regarding transportation were sort of like what your favorite destination is within a 5-minute drive, or a 10-minute bike ride, or a 20-minute walk. And those are some of the things I think we're interested in hearing about, or, what would make your walks more enjoyable, or if you have anything close by that you would like to walk to, or, walk to now. I think that those are helpful for us to hear some examples, if people will be willing to either share it in the chat or unmute and just tell us your thoughts on those things.
I would also just add, Carrie, to that comment, because I think, when I shared the maps of saying we're focusing on this area because this is one of the areas where we're seeing a lot of change and where we're anticipating a lot of change. We still would love to get your feedback about the other areas of the plan that you think need attention, or that there are opportunities to create, protect, or avoid certain things. For example, we've gotten a lot of feedback about sidewalk connections in kind of the western part of the plan area, or I should say lack thereof. So that's something that wasn't on our radar as much, but after going to several community events where we were tabling, we kept hearing the same comments, and now that is on our radar. So things like that, even in as Deborah said, more established neighborhoods, things that are that might feel like not a lot of change is happening. We would love to hear if there are things that do need to change in that area, or that you would like to see addressed. And I just wanted to read a comment that we got from Mansfield Caseman. Said this is a prime area for more affordable housing, given its access to mass transit and jobs related to healthcare, technology, life science, education, police, fire, and rescue. And I think that is that echoes a lot of what we've heard that Jessica was mentioning, these topics that have come up as we've talked to residents, is kind of more affordable housing. As we're seeing, this area has those extremely low vacancy rates for multifamily housing. It has some of the most expensive rents in the county, and and we're seeing an affordability issue. Recently, when we were out at the Shady Grove Farmers Market, we were talking to a lot of folks that were saying, I want to live here. I want to live in this area. I work here, but I have to live in Frederick because I can't afford to live here. Or folks who are saying, I can live here now, but there's no next step for me. I can afford an apartment, but as my family grows, I can't afford the space that my family needs to live here. So, I think that it's a huge issue for the county as a whole, Mansfield, but it is also a crucial part of this plan and how we can address those folks that live and work or want to live in the area, work in the area, or visit the area. And as you said, there are a lot of amenities and services and jobs in this area. So thank you for that comment. And I see that we're getting some of these, do not remove the speed bumps in the area that kind of slow down the traffic going through. Let's see. Keith mentions that he likes the Rockville Millennium Trail and how you can bike, run, or walk, and I'd love to see something that connects to it. The 2010 plan actually did call for a what they called the Life Sciences Loop Trail, which would connect with a bunch of the destinations in this area, and I believe had an extension going off towards the Millennium Trail. But this piece of like connecting trails to other trails or destinations is something that has come up over and over again. Because as many people say, if you can walk, but then you can't get to your destination, then can you really walk there? You can't, if we're missing those crucial last pieces. So yes, it looks like Aaron Savage shared the LSC Loop, the Life Sciences Loop Trail, and that actually just recently was funded as part of the county's recent capital improvement project budget. So hopefully we will get some movement on that Life Sciences Loop Trail that will be a place where people can walk, bike, or run and really connect some of the destinations within this area, and allows for future connections to existing trails, as you mentioned, Keith.
And I think we're seeing another comment about trails are awesome. Do we feel like more trails should be created, or the trails that we have should be protected, or all of the above? We have a question about the number of parks that are in the plan area. Unfortunately, our parks colleague is not on the call tonight, but Maren might be able to respond to that.
I can jump in on that. Yeah. So Susan, thank you for that question. So this area does have there's a large park in the western part of the plan area and Quince Orchard. And there are 2 parkland areas in the plan area, but neither of them have been improved. And what that means when we say not improved is basically they're land that the Parks Department owns, but they may have forest on them. They may have like shrubs and other things on them. It's not necessarily a high quality forest, but they're not usable for people to go to and visit. I can later on send out where the parkland is. It's funny, probably if you've passed it, you would not realize it is parkland. But again, as part of this process, we're identifying those needs that you're asking, like, do we need more parks and what should they look like? Are they places that people, play sports, or are they places that people sit and relax, and that are more quiet spaces? Are they a mix of the two? You know, we have some parks that meet both of the or all of those needs. So we'd love to hear from you about the types of parks, or if we need more parks in the area. And I should also say that, and Carrie might be able to add some on this, but most when we have developments that come into this area, they're required to dedicate a certain amount of open space. So that means that it is publicly available open space that anyone is allowed to use. And in some cases, that's just, it might be something like a large field or a plaza. And in other cases, like with the new development at the former Public Safety Training Academy, they're going to have some ball fields there that will be open to the public. So although it won't be publicly owned, it will be publicly available. So part of our analysis is also looking at what's the space that is free and open to the public that might not be our typical parkland.
To add what you had just said, Maren, it would be great if folks in the group, if there are certain amenities that they're looking for from the public spaces or the publicly accessible spaces that they want to see, that would be great to know. One of the key themes that we heard in the 2010 plan was the need for soccer fields. And so that's been a pretty fundamental part of that plan and will be considered when new development comes in. But if there are other needs that are out there that are growing that folks want to share, that's really helpful for us as we start this process.
Two comments that were just added in the chat. The first thought should be given to collaboration among government, nonprofits, faith communities, and civic organizations to community building, including the arts, recreation, senior and childcare, community gardens, and public forums. And also the Parks Department should be encouraged to develop these parks, needing sitting areas to encourage community communication, playgrounds, and dog parks. To me, leisure parks are more important than competition parks. And I would say one sort of thread through both of these comments that we've been thinking about as a team is sort of how the different communities and spaces can work together to create more opportunities for the social interaction, and sort of the idea of how you can connect with people across your community. And that sort of theme comes out in both of those comments for me. And so I'm excited to see the thoughts that you've shared there, and curious if you have any, if you want to build on either of those.
Just to also add to what Jessica said on Mansfield's comment about the collaboration among these various groups. I think that there are kind of also two threads there of stuff that we want to do as part of the plan, and we'd love to build some of these connections with the groups that you talk about, neighborhood groups, civic organizations, faith communities, and nonprofits through our work to get their input. And we've done some outreach to religious institutions, as well as nonprofits and institutions and businesses in the area. But we are always looking for more connections. We recognize that these are connections that we're trying to build and that many of you already have. So if there are organizations that you represent or are part of, or groups that you think that we should reach out to, which you're not sure if we have, please let us know. At the end of this meeting, I'll put up all of our email addresses, including some of our teammates who aren't here, but are really important team members for this plan. And you can reach out to us and let us know maybe who we're missing, or invite us to speak with a group or work with a group that you're a representative of or member of.
And it looks like we also have a comment for creating more disc golf courses, so sort of contemplative open spaces, but also active open spaces. So I feel like we do have we've had quite a bit of great discussion and comments and feedback on you know, sort of parks, trails, open spaces, both active and contemplative. Are there other things in your community that you want to create, protect, or avoid? For example, do you feel like you have the, you know, the right mixture of uses in your community? You know, do you have the place you can grab the gallon of milk that's easy, convenient? Do you you know, have other sort of wants, needs, desires, expectations? And so some great comments here: create opportunities for celebrating the richness of diversity through the arts, friendship picnics, and partnerships with business, nonprofits, faith communities, government departments, offices, schools, and civic organizations. Protect local wildlife and create more local farm markets. I'm glad to see the so many create. This is wonderful. Okay, so one comment is this area is covered in subdivisions. Each farm was developed as it became available without connections to adjacent areas. Retail was not included and could not be added at this point. A question about that. It's noted that each farm was developed as it became available without connections to adjacent areas. Do you all, you know, one of the things we've heard quite a bit is about the need for additional connectivity. So is that sort of an additional create is kind of, you know, begin to create some of those connections?
So just to build on what Jessica mentioned, when you say connections, Jessica, you're referring to like walking paths or biking paths, or not necessarily only roads. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Sometimes there are, you know, slivers of public right of way that maybe were thought of as having an opportunity for some kind of connection at one point, and they just haven't been improved with a sidewalk or a shared use path. And so sometimes we can identify some of those little slivers of land where we could improve the ability to walk or bike or scoot or roll between communities and destinations. And it looks like we have a few more added. Create community gardens, protect local wildlife.
And also the protect and strengthen our counties and this area's life science industry to compete with other mid-Atlantic emerging life science clusters like Philadelphia, Delaware, and research Triangle Park. Which we did touch on a little bit with this with Alex's trivia, that this area, but for those that aren't aware, this area really is a life science hub. As Alex mentioned, there are twice as many private sector life science jobs just in this plan area than in the entire rest of the county, which is kind of incredible for how large or how small the area is. And it is regularly ranked among the top 4 areas in the entire country, up there with, you know, Boston and San Francisco, and often above New York and Philadelphia in terms of a life science leader. So it's really unique to be this suburban area outside of Washington, D.C., but be one of the hubs in connection with other parts of Maryland and DC, but really one of the centers for life science research and innovation. So figuring out how to, I think, yeah, figuring out how to protect that and strengthen that, and also what that means. You know, what does it mean to support that industry, and what does it mean in terms of the types of needs that we need for employees, for people who you know, really fuel this these companies and these research institutions. What do they need to attract top employees? And what kind of jobs are created? Like, what does it mean for development and equitable development to support these organizations? One thing that we found in our research was that, you know, the types of jobs that are created from life sciences are very diverse in ways that I, at least personally, did not expect, in terms of, you know, there are a lot of jobs through these companies that you don't need a degree, like that offer opportunities for people with a high school degree or with associate's degree, as well as bachelor and PhDs. So a real mix of experience and working experience. And we also fortunately have 2 institutions nearby to this area, the universities at Shady Grove, as well as the Montgomery County Community College at Germantown, that offer life science degrees. There's an associate's degree at Montgomery County Community College. So we have a lot of folks that are learning how to work in this field and are finding jobs in this area. Susan, I love that comment also of strength and connection with common history, with street and community names from Indigenous peoples and historical people and farms and land grant names. I think recently the planning department has been part of you know, working in various communities to rename certain streets in throughout the county. And I think that learning about the history in this area and incorporating into the work that we do is an important part of it. So thank you for that suggestion. And Mansfield Caseman also asked how the cities of Gaithersburg and Rockville are being engaged to assure that the policies, laws, and investments in infrastructure, parks, recreation, community policing, et cetera, that we're on the same page. So there are a couple ways in which we work with these 2 municipalities. We have an implementation advisory committee, which is a group of institutional, commercial, as well as community resident stakeholders that are involved in the implementation of the 2010 plan. So they've been working in this area and with the planning department on a rotating basis, but for some of them for almost 10 years. And we always have representatives from the planning departments of Rockville and Gaithersburg on this implementation advisory committee. So we meet almost monthly with them, and you know, we talk about the Great Seneca Plan and the work that we're doing here and get feedback from them. We also, as a planning department, as the Mid-County team, because we work so closely with in the areas around Rockville and Gaithersburg so often, we have a coordinating committee that we will meet quarterly with representatives from Gaithersburg and Rockville. We also are inviting them to be part of a special roundtable where they'll be able to share their kind of vision for this area and their concerns and efforts. And we've also had individual meetings with planning department, with planning department representatives from Rockville and Gaithersburg. I think, one thing that we also recognize is outside of the cities, like the official representatives of these two municipalities, that, the way people live does not fit into these artificial boundaries that we create. People in the Great Seneca Plan area don't say, well, I don't go to Crown to eat dinner because it's in Gaithersburg. People cross lines all the time. People work in the municipalities and live in the, unincorporated Montgomery County. So we recognize that there's like this crisscrossing, and some of the events that we've planned in terms of pop-ups and community events, and a lot of the organizations that we're also coordinating with serve people from Gaithersburg and Rockville, because we want to get their opinions as well as the folks who live within the plan boundaries. And we're going to continue to coordinate with Rockville and Gaithersburg throughout the development of our recommendations. And they, as well as being part of the process, will also have the opportunity to submit comments later on as we bring it to the planning board. But we really do see it as an iterative conversation with them. And I think it was really helpful speaking with Gaithersburg early on. They're actually working on their own comprehensive plan right now. So to hear some of the things that they were considering, allowed us to think about the areas that we were going to be looking at that were right on that border, basically touching it to say, okay, if they're looking at it in this way, what does that mean for us as we look at this area as well? So so we will be working closely with them. So I'm really happy with how much kind of creative ideas, and Jessica said like how much create ideas, that like there are things that we love about our community that we want to protect and make sure stay priorities, but also that there are lots of ideas of like how to improve the area and the quality of life for people who are living and working and studying here. Feel free to continue to drop some things in the chat if you want, but I was going to share the presentation again and just go over some of the next steps for the area and how you can stay involved in this plan process, because this is really, we've done some outreach, but this is really one of our first large meetings, and we'll continue to meet with organizations and residents and have pop-up opportunities. So let's see, as I pull this up, sorry for the stall, that we will continue to have opportunities for different types of conversations and in different venues. So in terms of our next steps, just to give you an idea about where we are in this planning process, we started working on this plan in February of this year, and started having some initial conversations with folks and doing some initial data gathering. But our work really began in May of this year when our scope of work was approved by the planning board that said this is what we're going to look at, and that's available on our website, which I believe Bilal dropped in the chat, and if not, he can. But it's on our website. And now where we are in this plan process is the visioning and analysis phase. And Jessica described what visioning is. It's really talking to folks and getting an idea of what our shared community vision is for this area. And then the analysis part is we're also doing a lot of data collection in the meantime, or at the same time, and analyzing that data. So both of these things, it's really the bulk. As you can see, it's May of this year, 2020, all the way through January of 2023. And all of that work will go into informing our preliminary recommendations, which we will plan to share with the public in early 2023 and share with the planning board as well. The next steps seem kind of bureaucratic, so I won't go through all of them in detail, but we will have several opportunities to kind of go back and forth with the community as we present preliminary recommendations, get feedback from the planning board and from community members and our stakeholder partners. And that will happen a couple times. And then another just big opportunity to highlight is we are expecting in May 2023 to have a public hearing at the planning board. It might be we might be off by a month or so, but that's an opportunity to go in front of the planning board and share what you've shared with us throughout the process with the planning board, either in person or virtually. And you'll have the same opportunities to do that with the county council as well. So we will update you on this timeline, but we expect to have this plan approved and adopted by the county council and the planning board in January of 2024. So as you can see, it's a rather long process, or I guess a short one, depending on who you ask. Sometimes it feels short. And the next steps, the like immediate next steps in what we're doing in terms of public interaction engagement is we're having a technical advisory panel that's made up of experts in various fields, including urban design, planning, transportation, architecture, community engagement, life sciences, among others, that are helping us look at a few major questions about how we kind of make these connections within the life sciences area, which you can see again on the map here. And that's coming up actually next week. And next Wednesday, they'll be presenting their findings to us, and that will be a public presentation. So I will be adding that to our website. I can also send it out to the folks who are on this call, but you can attend that if you're interested in hearing what their recommendations are. They'll be sharing it early evening on Wednesday at the University's at Shady Grove campus. We'll have an existing conditions report. So if you enjoyed that trivia and just want to know more about the area, we'll be releasing this report in October, sharing it with the community and with the planning board. And then we're also going to have an in-person meeting. I know that the convenience of virtual can be great for some people, but some people really crave that in-person connection. So we will be having an in-person visioning meeting that would happen in October. And we'll also be doing door-to-door canvassing, likely in November, where we're going to a lot of the multifamily housing, the apartments, and knocking on people's doors and really having conversations with them the same way that we've had with you, and asking similar questions about their experiences and their hopes and their concerns for their area where they live. So that will be happening in November. If you want to stay involved with the plan, we have something called the React map, which is where you can just drop a pin on a map and tell us a comment. It can be like right where you live. It can be somewhere that you visit and say, I love this, I hate this, I need this here. So just let us know. You can also, if you haven't taken our questionnaire, we have a somewhat lengthy but not terribly intimidating questionnaire that that you can fill out that gets at some of these questions that we asked you. So if you want to share more detail with us, I suggest you check it out. And then, as I mentioned, you can request a meeting with us if you're part of a civic association, if you're part of a church, or some sort of youth group or anything else. Let us know, and we're happy to come talk to your community, whoever that is. So you can request a meeting with us. And although I don't have it on here on our webpage, if you're not on our e-letter newsletter, we do not send out too many e-letters. So just, I'd say fewer than once per month, but join, because that's the easiest way to find out about kind of what's happening next in the plan area. And we also give updates about development approvals and development review that's coming up. I probably should have shared this at the beginning so you knew who we were. But maybe if you guys can just smile and wave when I call your name. As I mentioned, not everyone, there's a lot of people working on this plan and we all have different specialties. So if you have something that you're really curious about and it's in one of these specialty areas, you know, you can feel free to reach out to that person individually. I'll be sharing this presentation online. So if you don't grab the name right now in the email, then you can grab it off of the PowerPoint once it's up on the website. But you met Carrie Sanders, who's the Mid-County Division Chief. So for our entire division, and Jessica McVeary, the Mid-County Division Master Plan Supervisor. I am the Great Seneca Plan project lead. My name is Maren Hill. My email apparently is not linked to, but it will be soon. And then Erin Savage, who's here, is our urban designer. And Alex Rixey is the transportation planner. Bilal Ali is the real estate market researcher. Chuck Hines, who we mentioned, is our parks planner. He was not able to make it tonight. Lisa Gavoni is our housing planner. And then Steve Finley, who has been working, he worked on the 2010 plan. So he's really knows this area well. Whenever we don't know something, we ask Steve. But Steve is the environmental planner for this project. And then we also have two interns, Pamela and Kenneth, who have been providing a lot of support in terms of community outreach and engagement, as well as data collection. So we have a good big team, and we're all working on different areas, but collaborating together. So if you have specific things that you want to, feel free to reach out to folks. But just thanks once again for joining us and for all of your creative ideas and comments. And we hope that you stay tuned and you know, continue to engage with us throughout this plan process. And thank you. Yes, we can do silent claps. And thank you so much. And feel free again to email any of us or to follow up. You can look for an email from me shortly if you signed up to attend this meeting with some of the information that I said I would follow up with. So thanks again and enjoy the rest of your evening.